Hi, fifth graders. We are back for another day with decimals, and today we are going to practice comparing and ordering decimals. So comparing and ordering decimals is just like comparing and ordering whole numbers. The only difference is we have to really make sure we pay attention to our decimal point and make sure our places stay lined up. So if we were supposed to compare 1 and 209 thousandths and 1 and 31 hundredths, here's what we would do. The first thing we need to do is stack the numbers with the decimal points lined up. So we're going to keep them in the same order. 1 and 209 thousandths was written first, so I'm going to write it first here. And then right underneath it, I'm putting 1 and 31 hundredths, and I'm making sure that my decimal point is lined up, and therefore my places are lined up. And you're going to notice it's more important to line up our decimal point. We're not trying to line things up to the right. The second step would be to add a 0 as a placeholder when necessary. So in this number, we can add a 0 to the 1 and 31 hundredths and make it 1 and 310 thousandths, because now it has the same value. 310 thousandths has the same value as 31 hundredths. Once we have them stacked like this, you compare each place starting with the largest place, just like you already know how to do with whole numbers. So when I started comparing here, I noticed that my ones place was the same, but when I got to the tenths place, 2 is less than 3. And that helps me then compare my numbers. So I'm going to complete the number sentence that we had from the beginning. And I know that because 2 tenths is less than 3 tenths, 1 and 209 thousandths is less than 1 and 31 hundredths. This is why it's important to make sure we line up our decimal points, because even though this first number had more digits, it is actually a smaller number than the second one, because the value of the numbers in these places in the top number are less. 2 tenths is less than 3 tenths. That's why it also helps to put a 0 as a place value if you need to, because it's much easier to see this and say, well, 209 is less than 310. So it makes sense that 209 thousandths is less than 310 thousandths. Now I'm going to show you the types of problems you're going to have on your work and show you how to do them. So you're going to see problems that look like this, where it says complete the number sentence with the less than symbol, the greater than symbol, or the equal to symbol. So when you see these two numbers here, you need to be stacking them. So on your whiteboard, you should be writing the numbers. So take the first number, because we read numbers from left to right. Take the first number and write it down. I'm going to do that on my paper. 0 and 78 hundredths. And then I'm going to take the second number and I'm going to make sure that I line up my decimal point in my number. So I'm going to write 0 and 785 thousandths. So you can see my two numbers written. Now this is the part where, because they don't have the same number of digits, remember that in decimals, we can add zeros as placeholders at the end of the number, and it doesn't change the value. So I'm going to add a 0 to make my first number 780 thousandths. Because it has the same value, it is equivalent to 78 hundredths. Now I go place by place. In my ones place, I have both zeros, so I can't tell there. In my tenths place, they're both 7s, so I can't tell there. In my hundredths place, they're both 8s, so I can't tell there. But right here, in my thousandths place, I can see that 5 thousandths is more than 0 thousandths. That means 78 hundredths is less than 785 thousandths. 0 is less than 5, so my first number is less than my second number. Remember, we read from left to right, so when I put the symbol in here, I make sure that I grab the less than symbol. We would read this as 0 and 78 hundredths is less than 0 and 785 thousandths. Then you would take a picture of your work and put it right here. We might also have ones where we have to order. This says put these decimals in order from least to greatest. So again, I'm going to make sure that I am stacking my numbers and that I'm keeping my decimal point lined up. And I'm just going to write them in the order that I see them. So I'm going to start with my first one, which is 2 1/10. Once I write that, I am basing the rest of my numbers off of that decimal point. So when I write 1 and 345 thousandths, you're going to see I lined my decimal point up. So my ones place matched and my tenths place matched. Okay, I do the same thing with the next number, 1 and 99 thousandths. And my last number, 1 and 86 hundredths. It is very, very important that you line up your decimal points. Okay, we're not lining them up to the right, we're lining up the decimal points. And then if you need to, you can add your zeros as your placeholders. So I can make all of my numbers go to the thousandths place. Now that I have those written, I find the smallest one because I'm looking for least to greatest. So when I go through these, I look at my ones place first. Well, I know 2 is not the smallest, so it's got to be 1, 1, or 1. But within those 3 numbers, they all have 1 whole, so I have to go to my tenths place. I have 3 tenths, 0 tenths, and 8 tenths. 0 tenths is going to be the smallest, so that means this is going to be my first number. I'm going to write it on my paper so I don't forget. So 0 and 99 thousandths. I'm crossing it off on my list, and I have it written at the bottom as the first one from least to greatest. I'm going to say that is less than whatever the next number I put. So then I look again, and I'm noticing that I have 2 that have a 1 in the ones place. So I'm looking between those 2. I have 3 tenths and 8 tenths. 3 tenths is less than 8 tenths. So that's the next one I'm writing in order. 1 and 345 thousandths. And that's going to be less than whatever I put next. So I put less than each time because each of these is less than the number before when we read from left to right. So now I have 1 and 860 thousandths, or 2 and 100 thousandths. We always look at the largest place. 1 is less than 2. So I can stop right away right here because I know this number is smaller than this number. So 1 and 860 thousandths is less than 2 and 100th, or 100 thousandths. So once I have those all written, then I can type them in for my answer. Now I added zeros here to the end. If I want to just keep the original numbers, I just have to make sure I'm matching what I see on there. So I'm going to type them in and show you how I write that. Okay, so I've typed them in so you can see I've put them in order from least to greatest here. 1 and 99 thousandths is less than 1 and 345 thousandths, which is less than 1 and 86 hundredths, which is less than 2 and 1/10. Then I would take a picture of my work and put it right here on the slide. The last type of problem you're going to have today is going to ask you to write a decimal that is greater than one number and less than another number. So right here we see we're supposed to write a decimal that is greater than 17 and 32 thousandths. So I'm going to go ahead and write that. And less than 17 and 231 thousandths. So I wrote those two numbers, and I'm going to look at them and try to find a number that is bigger than this, but less than this. Well, I'm going to notice right away they both have a 1 in the tenths place, and they both have a 7 in the ones place, so that doesn't really help me. But when I get to my tenths place, this one has 0 tenths, and this one has 2 tenths. So all I need to do is stop and say to myself, okay, well, what's more than 0 tenths but less than 2 tenths? 1/10, right? So I keep my 17 the same, but I put a 1 in my tenths place. Once I put that there, I could put any number in my hundredths and thousands place. because 1 is between 0 and 2/10. And this digit has more value than the smaller 2 digits. So I could put any number here. I'm just going to put 0, 0. That's easy enough for me. So then in my answer, I would type 17 and 100 thousandths. Okay, so you're going to have problems like the 3 problems that I just showed you on your work today. And when you are done, submit your slides on Schoology.